Welcome, everybody, to Black and Gold Weekly, a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. This is episode 46, and we've got another week of Boston Bruins action under our belts as this team continues to be, well, I don't really know what to make of this team this year. There's some games where they look so good and like the Bruins were expected to, and then there's some other games where, you know, you're kind of left scratching your head, wondering if this team's even going to make the playoffs. And all in all, they actually had a pretty good week this past week. But this season, in general, continues to be a very interesting one for the Bruins. And as we continue now into December, we're still kind of looking for this team to fully get playing at their best for an extended period of time. They have played some good games, though, over this past week, and we'll definitely be talking about that. Off the ice, it's certainly been a less eventful week for the Bruins this week when it was last week. But there's a lot of good stuff happening on the ice that we'll be getting into. And then, obviously, at the end, we'll be talking about the upcoming week of games for the Bruins as well. I also want to check in on how they're doing in the Atlantic Division and just kind of look at the division standings and the Eastern Conference standings as to where the Bruins sit right now. And some goaltending talk as well, because I think we're finally starting to see the Bruins goaltending perform at a level that they're supposed to be performing at, and that is a good sign for Boston. So before we get into everything, I do just want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show is in partnership with them and would not be happening without them. So thank you to everyone at BNG for the continued support. Also want to draw your attention to the links down in the description of this video. We have 3 links down there. With Christmas coming up, the holiday season is here. If you are in the market to purchase any sort of Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any of the 32 NHL teams, or NCAA college apparel, there's a link there for you in the description. It would really help out a lot if you could shop through those links. There's a huge variety of all different team branded products, no matter what team you want. All the usual stuff like hats and jerseys and t-shirts and sweatshirts and all of that. And a lot of other really cool accessory products as well. All available through those 3 links. The top one being for Boston Bruins. The second one being for any NHL team. And the third one being for NCAA colleges. So again, it would really be awesome if you could search those things out and shop through those links. But without further ado now, let's get into it, and we'll start by taking a look at this past week for the Boston Bruins. All right, so let's get started here reviewing the last week of games for the Boston Bruins. And as I talked about last week, this is a tough stretch here for Boston. They are playing a lot of quality opponents. However, they've done pretty well for themselves over the last week or so here, playing some pretty tough games, able to win a couple of them, some OT losses in the other to at least still pick up a point. And we're going to go back all the way to Nashville because when I recorded last week's episode, that Thursday night game had not happened yet. So let's take a look here, a closer look at how the Bruins did in these matchups. Predators back on last Thursday night. This was a very impressive road win for the Bruins. 2-0 shutout over the Predators, picking up their first shutout win of the season. And there was a lot of shots on goal in this game. 75 total shots, 33 for the Bruins, 42 for the Predators. But at the end of the day, Boston got the puck in the back of the net, whereas the Predators were not able to. Slight face-off advantage for the Bruins at 51%. Power play 1 for 4, so that obviously helped out there a lot for Boston. While the Preds went 0 for 1 on the power play, they only had 1 power play chance and were not successful on it. Obviously, they didn't score in the game. Preds out-hit the Bruins 24-13, but the Bruins out-shot blocked the Predators by almost double, 20-11. And the Preds had a slight advantage in giveaways. They only gave the puck away 5 times, while the Bruins 8. But at the end of the day, what matters is the final score. And the Bruins, well, they won where it mattered. They went up to 12-8-0 on the season with this win. Power play goal in the first period by Jake DeBrusk, his 4th of the season, ended up being the only goal that the Bruins would need. Now, they did score again in the second period, 30 seconds in. Brandon Carlo scored for Boston to put them up 2-0, but Nashville completely held off the board in this one by Jeremy Swayman, who had a very, very good night in goal, stopping all 42 shots that he faced, and obviously getting the shutout win. Again, we're going to talk quite a bit about Bruins goaltending here later in the show. These guys are really starting to get it together and play very, very well at the right time. Now, unfortunately, Jakub Zboril was injured in this game. He only played 5.5 minutes before leaving the game and not returning with an injury, and has since been out. But that's definitely a little bit of a negative. But at the end of the day, Boston overall with a very strong performance here on the road. They didn't get a whole ton going offensively. Obviously, only the 2 goals, but that's all they needed. I mean, this was just the Bruins doing what they needed to do to win the game. And they didn't need to go out there and try and score 5. They only needed to score a couple. And they played well defensively. They let Swayman, have a great night in goal. And all in all, it was a really strong performance here for the Bruins, and they got a big road win that they desperately, desperately needed, and that set them up for what, was going to be a pretty good stretch here. Now we move on to Saturday, which is the last game of Brad Marchand's suspension, the last game that he missed. Charlie McAvoy also missed this game with an illness, and they lost in overtime, but this was a very strong game for the Bruins. This was a very good performance. And watching this game, I was overall pretty happy. It wasn't the best start to the game. I didn't think the first period was all that great, but I like the way Boston fought back after going down 2-0. And all in all, for the Bruins, having Marchand out, having McAvoy out, 2 major pieces missing from the lineup, for them to be able to get a point out of this game against a very good team like the Lightning and a team that's playing very, very well right now in the Tampa Bay Lightning, this was a solid performance from the Bruins. You're not going to see any complaints from me about this. Bruins outshot the Lightning 39-25. Won the faceoffs by a pretty good amount here, 58% to 42. So good night in the faceoff dot. Only got 1 power play in the game, did not convert, but the Lightning were 0 for 2 on the power play as well. So neither team able to score on the man advantage. So a good night for the PKs. 33 hits for the Bruins in this game, 31 for the Lightning. So pretty evenly physical game between these two. 19 shot blocks for Tampa Bay, 11 for the Bruins, 13 giveaways, however, for the Lightning, only 7 for Boston. And anytime you can limit your giveaways like that, especially against a team like Tampa Bay, that is a good sign, and that's something that's going to help you a lot get at least a point or 2 out of that game. So it opened up. Boston actually very, very good shots on goal-wise throughout this game, and they were carrying the play and controlling the play, but it was the Tampa Bay Lightning that scored first, and it was actually a shorthanded goal from Taylor Radish that put them up later on in the first period, up by 1 in this game, and that was really frustrating. Shorthanded goals usually come back to bite you, and this was not a good shorthanded goal to give up if you're the Bruins. Mike Riley got caught completely flat-footed, skated right around by Radish, and then he was able to put it by Swayman. And it wasn't a pretty play. It wasn't a good play. Lightning get out to the 1-0 lead, and that's how we go to the first intermission. In the second period, obviously hoping for a pushback from the Bruins, but unfortunately, just about 3.5 minutes into the second period, Tampa Bay extended the lead to 2. Andre Palat scored for the Lightning, and they went up 2-0 in this game. And honestly, watching this game, I was starting to get worried at that point. I was thinking, oh no, this is not good. Lightning are going to start to run away with it here. But that is not what happened. The Bruins kept pushing. They kept staying strong, trying to, take the fight back to the Lightning. And late in the second period, Charlie Coyle was finally able to get the Bruins on the board. He scored his 7th goal of the season with about 3.5 minutes to go in the second period. And that cut the Tampa Bay lead down to 1 and gave the Bruins some much-needed momentum heading into the third period. Going into the third, Curtis Lazar, not the goal scorer that you would be expecting for Boston, finally gets his first goal of the season. About just under 5 minutes into the third period, Boston ties the game at 2. Lazar gets his first goal, and that would be how it stayed all the way through the rest of the third period. It was a back-and-forth tight third. Neither team wanted to give up that, game-losing goal, and nobody did. So they stayed tied 2-2 all the way through the third period. That brings us then to overtime. Obviously, 3-on-3, a lot of open ice, a lot of up and down, odd man rushes each way. And about a minute and a half in, it didn't take long. Steven Stamkos was able to rip one into the back of the net. And the Lightning won the game and got the second point. But the Bruins do get a point out of this game against Tampa Bay. And again, having Marchand out of the lineup, having McAvoy out of the lineup, I was happy with the Bruins getting a point out of this game. This very easily just could have been a, 4-1 type loss, 5-1 type loss where, they got pounded by a team that has been better than them this season, and they didn't let that happen. They fought hard all night long. They were able to come back from down by 2 goals, and they were able to get a point out of it. So that was overall, I think, a fairly strong performance from Boston. And when we look down here, I mean, some guys on the score sheet that we needed to see on the score sheet. Charlie Coyle with a goal, Curtis Lazar with a goal, Craig Smith with an assist, Eric Howla with an assist, Brandon Carlo gets an assist, Matt Grzelcyk gets an assist. So really some guys on the score sheet that you really wanted to see on the score sheet if you're the Boston Bruins. And look at this, nobody from the top line. Obviously Marchand wasn't playing, but no Taylor Hall, no Patrice Bergeron, no David Pastrnak, and the Bruins were still able to get a point without those big guns scoring. And this was a good one for the secondary scorers to chip in and be productive for the Bruins. And Jeremy Swayman, gave up 3 goals on 25 shots. Not his best performance, but certainly not his fault. I mean, the breakaway shorthanded goal by Radish, you really can't put that on the goaltender. Why are you giving up shorthanded breakaways? Stamkos' overtime winner was on a 2-on-1, was an absolute ripper of a shot. I mean, there's not much the goaltender's going to do there. So this certainly wasn't on Jeremy Swayman. He had an okay game. It certainly wasn't his best, but he had a decent game. It certainly was. The loss wasn't on the goaltender. All in all, happy to see the Bruins get at least a point out of that game, and it was good to see them come back against a strong team like the Lightning. Then they had 3 days off while they got ready for their Western Canadian road trip here. And that one started on Wednesday night in Vancouver. And this was probably, as frustrating as it's been for the last stretch here for Boston over this last week or so. Ah, man, after going to overtime with the Lightning, after beating the Predators, you end up losing to the Vancouver Canucks. Now, the Canucks are 2-0 now under new head coach Bruce Boudreau, and they're playing a lot better since the coaching and general manager change up there in Vancouver. So, maybe, it's not as bad of a loss as the records might indicate, but still, this was a game that I was kind of looking for the Bruins to win. And unfortunately, they lost this one in a shootout. It was once again a very low-scoring game. 36 shots for the Bruins, 32 for the Canucks. Again, both teams only scored 1 real goal. The shootout goal doesn't really count. So both teams only scored 1 real goal, and despite all those shots on goal. Face-offs slightly favored the Bruins at 52%. Both of the real goals scored in this game came on the power play. Each team's power play was 1 for 4. Bruins out-hit the Canucks 28-20. outshot blocked them 19-15, and were better as far as giveaways are concerned with only 6 to the Canucks 11. That's something I've noticed recently with the Bruins, is that they have not been turning the puck over as much. And that's been a big help for this team, I think. That's really led to some positive things where they are not giving the puck away at the same rate that they were early in this season. But there were no goals in the first period of this game. This one stayed very, very low scoring. Brock Besser opened the scoring in the second period, late in the second period, actually, for Vancouver on the power play. He put them up 1-0 with about 5 minutes to go in the middle frame. But the Bruins were able to answer back in the third period. Patrice Bergeron got his 9th of the season just under 5 minutes into the third on the power play to tie the game up at 1. And that was it for scoring all the way through overtime into the shootout. And then when we got to the shootout, JT Miller and Bo Horvat were able to put the puck in the back of the net for the Canucks. Nobody on the Bruins could score, and the Canucks take this one in a shootout. So once again, the Bruins do get a point, but obviously a game that you would have liked to have seen them win against a team that is, not doing very well this season in Vancouver, but they were at least able to get a point out of it. It wasn't all for naught. And they started the road trip with a shootout loss to the Vancouver Canucks. And that brings us now to our last game to go over, last night's contest against the Edmonton Oilers. And this one was downright impressive. This was not a game I was expecting the Bruins to win. I'll be honest with you, I thought Boston was going to lose this one. Them second game in a back-to-back, going into Edmonton. Now, Edmonton, they're struggling here recently. They've now lost 4 in a row, including this game. But I did not like the Bruins' chances. I did not have a lot of confidence in them going into this game. I was very much worried about it. I thought the Oilers were going to take this as a good opportunity to catch the Bruins on the second half of a back-to-back and break their losing streak and get back into the win column. Boston didn't let it happen, though. We had Linus Omar in goal for this one. He played absolutely great. And the Bruins were able to find enough offense to squeak out the 1-goal win in this one. They defeat the Oilers 3-2 and improve to 13-8-2 on the season. Look at the Oilers outshoot the Bruins by quite a bit, 43-30 in this one. Oilers got a lot of rubber on goal, but Ullmark stood tall in net. Bruins did win the faceoff battle, 57-43. Percentage on the faceoff dot. Power plays for both teams effective in this game, and that is no surprise given that the Oilers have the best power play in the NHL. The Bruins power play is pretty strong as well, and Boston went 1 for 3 on the man advantage. Edmonton went 2 for 5. Both of their goals in this game came on the man advantage. However, they could not score 5-on-5. That's what allowed the Bruins to win this game. Boston out-hit the Oilers 23-17. They vastly outshot blocked the Oilers, 19-9. And then, unfortunately, the giveaways came back here. But they were bad for both teams. Giveaway numbers in this game for both teams really bad. Boston credited with 20 giveaways in this game. The Oilers, 15 of their own. So there was a lot of turning the puck over here for these two throughout this one. But Brad Marchand back for the Bruins. He actually came back in the Vancouver game. His second game back was this one, and he did not waste any time getting his first goal back in the lineup for Boston. First period, he puts the Bruins up 1-0 with a shorthanded goal, his 10th goal of the season, and that gave the Bruins the lead. They would not look back after that. Jake DeBrusk on the power play made it 2-0. As he scored just a couple of minutes into the second period. He got his 5th goal of the season and his 2nd goal in the last 4 games for the Bruins. So DeBrusk despite the trade request, starting to play a little bit better here, starting to add some offense for the Bruins, and that is a great sign for him. The Oilers were able to answer, though, with a couple of power play goals from Leon Draisaitl, the league leader in goals right now. You knew you weren't going to be able to keep him off the board for long. He scored late in the second period on the power play to make it a 2-1 game. And then in the third period, he scored again on the power play to tie the game up at 2. And at this point, it looked like the Oilers might be able to make a comeback. The Bruins said no, however, as Linus Omar continued to play fantastic in goal. Matt Grzelcyk gets his first goal of the season. He's a guy that I've talked a lot about the Bruins needing more offense from on the back end. I don't think he's been having that great of a season this year. Well, he got a huge goal for the Bruins late in the third period. Just, under 3 minutes to go in this game when he scores. And he gets his first goal of the year, giving the Bruins a 3-2 lead. And they would hold on for the 3-2 win in Edmonton. And like I said, I was really, really impressed with this win. This was not a game I was thinking that the Bruins were going to get 2 points out of, and they did. And this is a big one on this road trip now, as we'll see what they can do in Calgary tomorrow night. But this was a big win for the Bruins to beat the Oilers in Edmonton. This should be a confidence builder for Boston. If we look at the point totals here, Craig Smith, again, starting to get some production out of him. He gets another assist in this game. Patrice Bergeron picks up an assist in this game. Marshy gets the goal. Taylor Hall has 2 assists in this game. So, multi-point night for Taylor Hall. Jake DeBrusk with the goal. Grzelcyk with the goal on the back end. So, again, some more names coming up here. Guys that you want to see getting on the score sheet for Boston doing it. Obviously, they had points from Bergeron and Marchand and Hall and, some of the big guns, but also seeing Smith and Grzelcyk and DeBrusk on the score sheet. That's what Boston needs. And if they can get that secondary help, then, they're going to be able to make some noise this year and win some more games if they can get some of that secondary scoring consistently. Linus Ullmark had a fantastic night in goal. He did give up the 2 goals to Leon Draisaitl on their power plays, but Ullmark was just outstanding in this game. He stopped 41 of 43 shots. I would say this was probably his best showing as a Boston Bruin so far. And that's very, very encouraging to see. And it's really good for Boston. Their goaltending is getting a lot better here over the last few weeks. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Their goaltending is really getting good. And both Swayman and Ullmark are starting to play at the level that a lot of us were expecting them to heading into this season. So this was a huge, huge win here for Boston as they pick up the 3-2 victory over the Oilers. And this was a very pleasant surprise for me for them to win this game. And I'm really excited to see what they're going to be able to do going forward here. They got to close out this trip in Calgary Saturday night, tomorrow night. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But that's the last week of action for the Bruins. Now I want to talk about their goaltenders that I was mentioning, Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark, and we'll get right into that. Okay, everybody, so Boston Bruins goaltending. There's been a lot of talk. Tuukka Rask has been at practice. There's been a lot of talk about Rask coming back when he's healthy within, in the next month or so. Seeing him potentially back in a Bruins uniform. But the Boston Bruins goaltenders that they have now, Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark, are both playing very, very good right now and really starting to come into their own this season and playing the best hockey that we've seen from them all year long. They've actually been one of the best goaltending tandems in the NHL over the past 3 to 4 weeks or so. So really, goaltending hasn't been an issue for the Bruins. They're actually playing really, really well right now. I got their season stats up right now. We'll take a look at this. Then I'm going to narrow it down to just the last 3 weeks, and we're going to see just how good Swayman and Ullmark have been playing. So overall on the season, Jeremy Swayman has started 13 games. He's 7-4-2 with a .922 save percentage, a 2.15 goals against average, and 1 shutout on the season. That came back against Nashville. Very solid numbers for Jeremy Swayman. I mean, most teams in the NHL would be more than happy if their goaltender had a .922 save percentage and a 2.15 goals against. I mean, those are high-level numbers in the NHL. I think if you went at the beginning of the season and told anybody, you know, your team is gonna, your goaltender is gonna have a .922 save percentage and a 2.15 goals against, pretty much every fan in the league is going to take that. Those are very, very strong numbers. And Linus Omar, after a bit of a rough start, has really started to get it together as well. He is 6-4-0 on the season, but has his save percentage up to .917, which is pretty solid in its own right. .920 is kind of, when you go over that .920 mark, you're getting into like elite category. Like you're getting up there when you're over .920. But .917 is a very, very solid number. And again, Ullmark struggled early in the year. He's been a lot better recently. And we'll get to see that when I break this down into just the last 3 weeks. But he also only has a 2.61 goals against average. I mean, those are very solid numbers. Goaltending has not been the problem for the Boston Bruins this year. They're getting solid goaltending from both of these guys in net. And I don't think Bruins fans have any realistic way to complain about what the goaltending has been this year, because both of these guys have been very good statistically, and they've been really, really good as of late. So I'm going to break this down into just the last 3 weeks or so here. So we're going to go back to November 19th through today, December 10th. So this is basically the last 3 weeks. And we're going to cut this down to just Boston Bruins goaltenders. And look at these numbers. Over the last 3 weeks, Linus Omar, who has started 4 games for the Bruins, has a 3-1-0 record with a .938 save percentage and a 2.01 goals against average. Those are elite NHL numbers. Anybody stopping almost 94% of the pucks against them, those are elite NHL save percentage right there. That is an elite NHL save percentage. 2.01 goals against. I will take that every single day of the week. Jeremy Swayman has been really, really good as well. He's only 2-2-2. His record isn't shining through these 6 games, but a .930 save percentage and a 2.14 goals against average. Both of these Bruins goaltenders have been playing very, very well, especially over the last 3 weeks. And all in all, they've had solid seasons. Their numbers for the year as an entirety are very solid, and their numbers over the past 3 weeks are elite. So goaltending's not a problem for the Bruins. Bruins' biggest issue has actually been scoring the last few weeks. The games that they've lost, you've noticed just going through a lot of low-scoring games for Boston. They've had a little bit of trouble putting the puck in the net, and their secondary scoring's been an issue. Who would have ever guessed that? Seems like it's the same thing literally every year, but scoring has been much more of the issue for the Bruins. And if we look at the games that they've lost recently, you know, against Vancouver, they only scored 1 goal. Against Tampa Bay, they only scored 2 goals. Against Detroit, they only scored 1 goal. So, like, in the games that they're losing, they're not scoring. And the games that they're winning, like, they scored 3 last night. That was a lot. That was a lot of goals. Because when they beat Nashville, they only scored 2. You know, even games that they're winning here recently, they're not scoring a lot of goals. So that has actually been more of the issue for the Bruins, has been putting the puck in the net. Certainly not the goaltending. These guys have put up fantastic numbers, especially the last 3 weeks or so. And I don't think anybody has any right to complain about Bruins goaltending. These guys have done everything you could possibly ask of them. They've been an elite tandem. I mean, it's not like they're just starting to play well. Like, they've been an elite tandem over the past 3 weeks. one of the best in the league. Now, yes, they started off the season a little bit shaky, especially Ullmark, and it took them a little bit maybe to get going, and they had some really bad games mixed in there. But all in all, Bruins goaltending has not been the issue, and certainly not recently. These guys have been playing at an elite level. Swayman and Ullmark deserve a ton of credit for that. But I feel like Ullmark and Swayman deserve that credit, and I wanted to point that out, like how good they've been, because I feel like Bruins fans love to complain about goaltending. It doesn't really matter who the goalie is. They just love to complain about goaltending. Well, you really can't complain about this. This is elite level goaltending over the past 3 weeks from both of our goaltenders. It's not like one's playing great and the other one stinks or anything like that. Both goalies are playing at an elite level right now. So there's really nothing to complain about when it comes to between the pipes. Okay, so now that we've talked about the goaltending, I want to take a quick stop and look at the Atlantic Division standings and the Eastern Conference standings and just see where the Bruins stack up right now. As far as, playoff positioning and where they're at compared to the other teams around them. And if we take a look here at the Atlantic Division, obviously Florida's in first place. They've had a phenomenal season from the get-go, 38 points. Tampa Bay, though, tied with them, 38 points. In one more game, they've played 26. And hey, look at this. The Toronto Maple Leafs also have 38 points on the year. However, they've already played 28 games. So they've played a lot so far this season. Detroit currently holds the fourth place spot in the Atlantic right now with 29 points. However, they've played 27 games. And Boston, who sits in fifth right now, has 28 points on the season. But they've only played 23 games, which means they have significant games in hand on both the Red Wings and Maple Leafs, who are in front of them in the standings right now. And, they've really separated themselves from the bottom three teams here, Buffalo, Ottawa, and Montreal. None of them have gotten to 20 points yet. They're well out of it at this point. I mean, none of those three even have much of a chance to even think about competing for a playoff spot. So it's really all about 5 through 1 here in the Atlantic. And while Boston may be sitting in fifth right now, when you factor in the games in hand, they have 4 games in hand over the Red Wings. All they have to do is make up that 1 point over the Red Wings, win one of those 4 games. Very, very likely that Boston passes Detroit in the near future, it looks like here in the standings, and will move into that 4th place spot in the Atlantic. So Boston here, not currently in a playoff spot, but very, very close to one. And when you actually factor in the games in hand, Boston is very, very likely to be in a playoff spot this season. So now we're going to take a look at the Eastern Conference when we factor in the wild card, because that was just the divisional standings. And again, we're back to the old setup, so it's not just 4 and 4 from each division making it. You have the wild card setup, which means 5 from one division could make it and only 3 from the other. Well, let's see how the Bruins stack up as far as that goes. Currently, your first wild card team is the Pittsburgh Penguins from the Metropolitan Division. Detroit holds the 2nd spot, and then there is Boston, the first team outside of the playoffs right now in the Eastern Conference. And just like with the Atlantic, Boston, those games in hand and only being 1 point behind Detroit make it very likely that when those games actually even out and those games in hand are made up, Boston is actually going to flip over the Red Wings and move into that second wild card spot. And heck, they've got 2 games in hand on Pittsburgh as well and are only 1 point behind the Penguins. They could probably knock Pittsburgh even down to that second wild card spot and have Boston take over the first wild card spot. Either way, it is very likely that the Bruins at least get into a wild card spot here in the Eastern Conference. And certainly likely to pass the Red Wings, maybe even able to potentially pass the Penguins as well. The teams below them, the only one that I would really think about if I'm the Boston Bruins would be the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think New Jersey's sinking. They're not playing well as of recent. They had a strong start to the year, but they're starting to fall back down. Flyers, what an absolute mess in Philadelphia. And then you're down into teams that don't even have 20 points yet. I don't think any of those teams are making the playoffs. So I really think the only team behind the Bruins that they really have to worry about would be the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus has started this season a lot better than most people thought they were going to be. However, they've played 2 more games than the Bruins. Boston is ahead of them as of right now, and they're not playing all that great as of lately either. They're 4-5-1 in their last 10 games. I really think it's about moving up if you're the Boston Bruins, just passing Detroit, maybe passing Pittsburgh, then trying to get up to get in the same area as you know, the teams in the top 3 in your division. But all in all, Boston, even though they're not technically in a playoff spot right now, when you factor in games in hand, they're in a very good spot to at least make the playoffs as a wild card team. And I'm not overly worried about this team missing the playoffs looking at these standings. But I do think there's probably a pretty good chance that unless they start ripping off some wins and putting together some longer winning streaks, like not just maybe 1 or 2 games, but more like 5, 6, 7 games in a row, they're probably going to stay behind the likes of Florida, Tampa Bay, and Toronto unless they can start putting together some longer winning streaks. But at the very least, it looks like Boston is going to be a wild card team this year. And again, overall, I'm not super worried about them missing the playoffs. They're in a good position right now to make the postseason in the East. And it hasn't exactly been the spectacular season that I was hoping for the Bruins. They're not up in the top 3 of the division right now. They're not ahead of Toronto. They're not ahead of Tampa Bay or Florida. I was kind of hoping that they'd be a little bit more in that mix, but there's still a long way to go. Boston's only played 23 games, so they got just under 60 games left. There's a lot of hockey left to be played. Things can still change a lot over the course of this season. I mean, there's a lot of hockey left to be played. Boston could move up. Boston could move down. Boston could stay right where they are. The teams around them could all move up or down or stay where they are. There's a lot that's going to change over these, remaining games this NHL season. But where they are right now, with the games in hand, Boston is in a good situation to make the playoffs this year. Looking like probably as a wild card team, but like I said, maybe if they can start stringing some wins together, they'll be able to catch up to the likes of Toronto and Tampa Bay and Florida and put themselves into the conversation. They're up closer to the top of the division. But at least they're in good shape right now to make the playoffs and at least be a wild card team. And the final thing to do here before we wrap up episode 46 is preview the upcoming week of action for the Boston Bruins. Like I said last week, they're on a pretty tough stretch here against some quality opponents, and that continues this week as well, as they start by wrapping up their Western Canadian road trip Saturday night, tomorrow night in Calgary, 10 p.m. start time. So late game for us on the East Coast, but obviously, 7 p.m. over in the Western Conference out in Calgary there. But this is going to be a tough game. The Flames have had a very, very strong season this year. They've been a very good team in the West, a surprisingly good team in the West for me, in my opinion. I was not expecting Calgary to be this good, and they've been very, very strong this year all season long. So Flames are absolutely a tough matchup. It's going to be very similar, I think, to the Oilers. Go into their building. That's a really tough road game. And again, I'll be pleasantly surprised if the Bruins are able to get a win out of this game. I'd certainly be happy with a point. And hey, if the Bruins get at least a point out of this Calgary game, they finish the Western Canadian road trip with 4 out of 6 points. And if they win the Calgary game, it'll be 5 out of 6 points. So that's definitely looking like it's going to be likely a successful trip for the Bruins. And hopefully they're able to get at least a point out of this Calgary game. But it is certainly going to be a tough matchup against the Flames, who have been extremely good this season, especially getting great goaltending from both Daniel Vladar, former Bruin, and Jacob Markstrom in goal. So that's going to be a tough one in Calgary on Saturday, but the Bruins just won a very tough game in Edmonton on Thursday, so there's certainly no doubt that they can do it. It's just going to be making sure that they're right Bruins team shows up for that Calgary game and is ready to go on Saturday night. Then they have a couple days off as they return to home ice, and they play again on Tuesday, December 14th against the Vegas Golden Knights. That is back at TD Garden, and Vegas, again, this is going to be a tough matchup for the Bruins because Vegas is getting healthier. And they had a really tough start to the year. They were not playing well. They had a ton of guys out with injuries, but they're starting to get healthier. They're getting big-name players back, guys like William Karlsson, guys like Max Pacioretty, Mark Stone. Big, important pieces are coming back into the lineup for Vegas, and they're playing a lot better recently since those guys have started to come back. They're starting to climb in the Pacific Division standings. They've actually won 3 games in a row as of right now. So this is, again, they're happy to be back at home, but Vegas is going to be a really tough matchup, and that is a very good team that the Bruins are going to have to contend with on Tuesday night. And then the final game of this upcoming week before next week's episode is on Long Island at the New York Islanders, going to UBS Arena for the first time. 7:30 start time on Thursday night, and well, it's certainly been a brutal year for the New York Islanders so far. This is a team that has endured an 11-game losing streak that they've since broken, but really, really tough. They had some games postponed because of COVID. They've had some major injuries that have kept guys out of the lineup, and they are the last place team in the Metro Division right now. After making it to the semifinals 2 years in a row, the Islanders find themselves a last-place team this year in the Metropolitan Division. So obviously that means that the Bruins should win this game. They're facing an inferior opponent, a team that they should beat, and a team that hasn't won a lot of games this season. However, I do not think this is going to be an easy game for the Boston Bruins. And I would be careful here if I'm Boston, because the New York Islanders are going to be hungry. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to be angry. And they're going to be pushing hard to get this win. This is not going to be a pushover, easy win for the Bruins. Just because the Islanders are a last-place team doesn't mean that you're just going to be able to go in there and have your way with them. Like, they are going to be fighting hard. They're trying to somehow save their season. They're in a big, big hole right now that they're in absolute desperation mode to try and dig themselves out of. And desperate hockey teams are often dangerous hockey teams. And I think you got to throw the record away here and realize the situation that the Islanders are in and how hard they're going to be fighting for points each and every game the rest of this season to try and pull themselves out of this hole. Bruins cannot take this Islanders team lightly because they will make them pay if they do that. So I hope Boston's ready to go for this one. First time visiting the new arena in New York at UBS Arena. And it's a game that I do expect the Bruins to win, and they should win. But I hope that they don't take the Islanders lightly because I don't think it's going to be an easy matchup. That team is in pure desperation mode trying to save their season. But once again, a pretty tough schedule here for Boston. Obviously, the Islanders game looks very, very winnable, but the Flames and Golden Knights are both difficult matchups, very good hockey teams, and gonna give the Bruins everything they got in those matchups. We'll see if Boston has an answer for them the way that they did against Nashville and Edmonton, or we'll see if those teams are able to come away with the 2 points and beat the Bruins. But a big set of games coming up here this coming week as we get closer and closer to Christmas. And 3 important games. Really want to see the Bruins get 4 out of a possible 6 points here. However they're able to do that, it doesn't matter. Just I want 4 out of 6 points over these next 3 games. You've got Calgary, Vegas, and the New York Islanders. I want 4 out of 6 points. Obviously, more than that would be even better. It'd be great. but less than 4 out of 6, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed. They certainly should win the Islanders game. I think they can definitely beat one of either the Calgary Flames or Vegas Golden Knights, and maybe they can win all 3. I mean, they're certainly capable. It's just a matter of, bringing it, playing that full 60 minutes on a nightly basis, game in and game out. But I want at least 4 out of 6 in the points in these next 3 games. But that's the upcoming week of action for the Boston Bruins here. And next week we'll find out how they do in these games, and we'll have more to talk about next week's episode after these games are completed. But that now is going to bring us to the end of episode 46 here. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Would not be here without all of you. And also, as of course, got to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. Show would not be happening without them. You can check out everybody's work at blackandgoldhockey.com. That's where all the writers post their articles, all the podcasts come out, and great Boston Bruins content coming out each and every day at blackandgoldhockey.com. This is Black and Gold Weekly, episode 46, brought to you in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode this week. I'll be back next week with episode 47. We'll have another week of Bruins action and topics to talk about. And we'll see what the Bruins are able to do this week. But hopefully it's another successful week for them. And with that, thank you guys all again so much for watching. Really appreciate the support. And we'll talk to you next week. Go Bruins. Let's hope they can do it again this week and have another solid week.